Hello, welcome back to How to Learn a Language. Today we're talking about confidence in speaking a foreign language and why knowing more doesn't automatically make speaking feel easier or safer. Now, this matters because so many language learners assume that confidence is something you'll reach eventually, right? You'll know enough words, you'll finish the grammar book, you'll get to a certain level, and then the confidence will kick in. And then when it doesn't, you think you've done something wrong. You think you're the problem. That is not the case. Now, this is the third episode of 4 in this series. Links to the series so far are in the show notes. So be sure to subscribe as well to the podcast to catch that final episode. And also over on YouTube, I've been sharing things as well that I think you're going to enjoy. And I do recommend signing up for my email list at lindsaydoeslanguages.com/email me because you'll get extra insights on these topics that won't be shared elsewhere. Now, first up, I want to talk about the confidence trap, right? Because this is a very common belief or misbelief, perhaps I should say, that confidence comes after competence. This idea of if I just learn a bit more, then I'll feel ready. If I can just iron out a few more mistakes, I'll be confident enough to speak soon. So you just keep accumulating knowledge, right? There's more grammar explanations, more vocab, more input. You join another course and you keep waiting for the confidence to come. But the problem is that confidence doesn't work like a reward that gets unlocked at a certain level. It's not something you earn by knowing enough. It's something that just builds and builds and builds and builds over time rather than just ding, you've turned the light on and there it is. It's like a dimmer switch, you know? And if you believe that confidence is going to come later, you keep postponing the very experiences that would help you build that confidence. Let's take speaking as an example. You feel like, okay, I'll speak when I'm ready. I'll speak when I'm more confident. And you're preparing to speak rather than practicing your speaking. And then this creates frustration. You know you're capable, but you still feel hesitant. And just your motivation is quietly being eroded away in the background. So instead of asking yourself, do I know enough to speak or am I ready? Try asking, well, what experience would help me feel safer speaking now? And just that little change in the way that you think about this is going to really help. This is why Promptly exists. This is why the Speak 28 by 28 challenge exists, because, you know, someone emailed the other week and said, oh, is this challenge for me? I'm a beginner. Will this help? Absolutely, it would, because it's about working with where you're at right now, building the confidence from the level that you're at rather than waiting until you know a certain number of words. Because we know, I've shared in these episodes here on the podcast and over on YouTube, the idea of speedy gains versus steady growth. Language learning is not just this constant linear thing. And that's not just about knowledge of the language, that's also about confidence, right? Think about this as a ladder. You can keep acquiring the language, you're climbing the ladder, you know more and more and more, you're going higher and higher, but the confidence we want to grow sideways. So if you just keep climbing and knowing more and more and more, you're getting higher and higher in your knowledge, but you're getting shakier and shakier in your confidence. So we need to grow it sideways. Your confidence is building the width of those ladder rungs, so to speak, right? Not just the height. And when it's growing sideways, it's growing in a different direction to knowledge. So it's not necessarily coming from the same thing. It's not adding the same thing, right? The experiences that are going to grow your confidence, things like staying in a conversation, even when you feel unsure of exactly what's going on, of having that chance to be understood despite mistakes, recovering when you get stuck rather than kind of shutting down and going, oh, okay, never mind, Google Translate it is. You know, none of them are adding necessarily new grammar or new vocab, but what they're doing is teaching your nervous system something really crucial, and that is that speaking is survivable. These are the things that are going to build your confidence, because you can be very knowledgeable in a language and still feel unsafe speaking. I have languages like this where, you know, I actually know a lot, but I haven't had many opportunities to speak. I've not like sought them out. I've not really done it for myself. And so my knowledge is high, but my willingness, my confidence to try and to speak and to use it is weak and is low. And so that's something that I could do if I wanted to improve in those languages, right? But, you know, you can be, but equally, I have languages where I'm less knowledgeable, but I've been really willing to try. And so I feel much more confident about using those languages. An example might be something like Sinhala, when I had, I think, 10 lessons, 10 1-hour lessons before going to Sri Lanka. Not a lot of time, not a lot of knowledge, but I was really willing to try when I was there. I really used the little amount of language that I had to be able to say the daily things that I wanted to say and feel good doing it with that little amount of language. It's not about how much you know, feeling confident. It's about how safe you feel using what you know. That's what's really going to build your confidence. How do we apply this? How do we make this happen? Well, I've shared some ideas already. Staying in the conversation, right? Staying after a mistake as well. Like, not just thinking, oh, I made mistakes. Okay, this has been fun. Bye. And like getting out as soon as you can, or like it feels awkward. You stay, you keep going. I think that's really what sums this up. Instead of aiming to sound good, we're aiming to stay. That's where you're going to be building confidence over time. And last episode, we talked a bit about language anxiety and how that can show up and affect your self-judgment and really get in the way of things. One thing I think is worth mentioning here as well in relation to confidence about speaking is that anxiety can happen at any level. One of the most confusing things is realizing that it doesn't disappear as your level increases. You might know exactly how to say something, you have it on the tip of your tongue, and then you still freeze. That's because anxiety isn't caused by lack of knowledge, it's caused by perceived risk. So if speaking feels risky, and it's always felt risky because you've never had the chance to do it, you've never put yourself in those situations, and so emotionally or socially it feels risky, your brain keeps thinking, this is a threat, be careful here, regardless of how competent you are. So I really just want to drum home the idea that knowing more is not what is going to make you feel confident in speaking a foreign language. Confidence building requires repeated exposure, manageable stakes that you can control a little bit, and reflection on what actually happened without that self-judgment, without that kind of clouding your vision of what it was. We're not looking for perfection here. We want things to be messy and real, and that's all that stuff is going to happen along the way, right? We're not looking for perfection every time. So don't try and sort of expect perfection. Don't hold yourself back because you're waiting to be perfect. And so you think the confidence will come. No, it won't. The confidence building needs to start now. And if you're realizing now, that confidence isn't about knowing more, I'm running a brand new free event very, very soon, which is going to help you to reapproach speaking with less pressure and much more self-trust, and really figure out what it is that you need and the adjustments that you need to make for your language learning. And I'm going to be sharing more next week. But in the meantime, you can catch up on the series so far here on the podcast, wherever you're listening to the episode, and over on YouTube as well. There's some different episodes over there. And I recommend joining my email list because there'll be some extra insights on these topics that will not be shared elsewhere. That's lindsaydoeslanguages.com/email me for that. As always, thank you so much for listening to How to Learn a Language, and I will be back next week.